In today's video, we're going to compare linen, hemp, and polyester thread and which might work best for you on your pipes. Stay tuned. Well, hello, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident piper. If you like this kind of content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, I do give Skype lessons if you want more personalized instruction, but more on that later. Today I'm going to be enjoying a bit of Canadian Club in my black coffee. Call it a Canadian Noir, I'm not sure, but it's quite tasty, and I'm not going to put a fine scotch in some black coffee. So about 6 months ago, I decided to put the various types of string on the market to the test. Now, one of them is the traditional yellow hemp. Now, this is really shoe repair linen, but everyone knows it as hemp, and it's readily available. I used a combination of both yellow hemp and waxed hemp, and ran those together to hemp the joint of my base. I also used traditional hemp on the middle. Now, this was just traditional hemp, nothing else. And then on the outside, I used polyester thread, and I have been plying these pipes nearly every day for about 6 months and have some opinions on it. So the first thing I was kind of interested in is how much maintenance does it take after you have strung the pipes, hemped the pipes, how much maintenance does it take to keep them up and going and at the right tension and snugness for the various fittings on the instrument? In this category, the polyester thread was the one that required the least amount of maintenance after the initial stringing of the joint. I only had to add polyester thread 2 separate times after the initial hemping, and both of those were within the first few weeks of it. I have not done anything to this joint in adding additional string since, shortly after this challenge began. So coming in second was actually the traditional hemp. The traditional hemp did a very good job. I only had to add additional string on this probably 4 times, and then there was one time I actually had to take just a little bit off. It got a little bit snug at the Stone Mountain where there was just a deluge of rain for anyone that was there, and it did get just a little snug. Not anything that I was worried about hurting or damaging the pipes, but again, there's no wax on this, and I didn't even put any hemp seal or anything else on the outside. It was just the hemp, and I didn't have to remove very much. And then when I came back to Dallas, I had to add a little bit again. So this has been a close second in the amount of string I've had to add to maintain the right tension on the joint. Coming in a distant third in terms of how often I had to adjust the string is the traditional yellow hemp. I had to add string easily 8, 9, 10 times. I actually lost track. I was trying to keep a log of it. And I also had to take it off more often. It would swell and contract, go back and forth more often. So I was adding hemp, I was removing hemp, and when I was adding hemp, I was adding just waxed hemp because it has a base of half waxed, half unwaxed. I was adding the waxed because I was thinking maybe it could be a little bit more stable than the other non-waxed hemp here and make it not swell as much, but perhaps there's just enough of the unwaxed in this joint to let it swell quite a bit more. So it's definitely more absorbent in my experience than the more traditional real hemp here. And again, the polyester didn't swell at all and needed the least adjustment. The next thing I was looking at was which one was the easiest to tune, which one felt the best on my shoulder in the moment while I'm tuning my pipes. And it was great having 3 right next to each other. I really could every day feel exactly how they each felt. Coming in first in this category is actually, surprisingly, the yellow hemp. My guess is the mix of the waxed and unwaxed hemp gave the proper amount of lubrication and yet just enough grab that nothing was slipping. So I could move it very slightly and it would hold in place. So for this test, this came in first. The polyester and the real hemp kind of came in second, but for different reasons. They had very different feelings. The real hemp, now again, there's no wax on this at all. I was just using hemp. There's no hemp seal. There was nothing, or beeswax. There was nothing put on the outside of this. So there was very little lubrication. So the real hemp ended up being just slightly grabby, kind of like click. You could kind of feel the part kind of grabbing, and I felt that was a little harder to get the exact placement of the drone. It was just slightly less nuanced, if you will. The polyester worked well in the smoothness as I was tuning, but I felt I had to use a little bit more force, a little bit more muscle to move it. And in using more muscle, again, that takes away some of the nuance that I'm trying to get when I'm fine-tuning my drones. My guess is, while very smooth, without any of the yarn-like tendrils or anything else, to get a nice fit, you have to add just a little bit more string, and it ends up being just a little bit tighter. Not tight enough that I was fearing in any way for the safety of the joint, but that it just took a little bit more muscle than either the hemp or the hemp. So again, the real hemp was kind of grabby, so it was a little bit harder. It kind of on the pin as I was turning it. This was much smoother, but took a little bit more force. So it's hard for me to say which one of these was better or worse. Neither was quite as smooth as the mix of waxed and unwaxed linen hemp. The final test I was doing on all of these was air tightness. How airtight were the joints here, specifically at the tuning pins? I did a Command Your Bagpipe episode about making sure your pipes were in good working order, so there's more on this test there. But briefly, you can cap the end and suck through it. It's kind of weird, but you want to make sure that there is no air leakage whatsoever. So I wanted to show right here that this joint is completely tight, as I just demonstrated. So if this is going to leak at all or not create as strong a suction, it's going to be because this joint right here and the material on it isn't quite as strong. So put that cap back in. See, I'm trying to get it either stuck to my lip or my tongue. And I can't do it with the polyester. So that's the polyester without any hemp seal on it though. So I'm gonna add a little bit of hemp seal and we're gonna retest it. The extra lubrication the hemp seal offers kind of reduced the amount of force I felt I was giving the top as I was tuning it. Totally airtight now, but it wasn't airtight at all without the hemp seal. My best guess, without all of the little tendrils of string that come off of real yarn, that there's nothing to kind of fill in the small gaps of wood grain and everything else. So if you are going to go the polyester route, you're going to need to make sure that you add hemp seal on a regular basis. Moving on to the real hemp. So first, again, I'm going to test the actual top itself. Totally tight. That's great. This one's had no additional wax, hemp seal, or anything added to the hemp on here. This is just real hemp. Gonna put it in. Totally airtight. Totally airtight. Again, ever just slightly grabby about how it moves, but it takes less force to turn, and it's totally airtight right now without any sort of lubrication. Then finally, the base. The base is the hardest to do this test with because you have to test two joints. So first, again, I'm going to test to make sure the end of this whole thing is tight. So just making sure the bush, that's completely tight. Here will be a little test for the method I'm going to be doing for the tuning pins coming up for my next test. I have here a mix of real hemp and pre-waxed hemp that I pre-waxed myself with real beeswax. I'll be going to that in another video, but let's make sure that this joint is airtight. We're good to go. So now we're going to be testing the airtightness of this particular fitting right here. Completely airtight right now. As you can see, completely airtight even across two joints. I might have added hemp seal maybe once at the beginning of hemping this, but I haven't added hemp seal on this for a while. I wanted to just see how the two went together and worked on their own without additional work. The maintenance this one needed was string and fitting. It was constantly too loose, too snug, going back and forth. That was a real headache, but I wasn't having to add hemp seal to keep the joint airtight. So what are my thoughts at the end of it, and which one would I use? Well, they all work. Let's make that clear. They all work just great. I've been a huge fan of the polyester for a few years now, and I don't regret any of the pipes that I've redone with the polyester, and I don't plan to rush out and redo them. My Robbies are still completely hemped up in the polyester, and they're going to remain that way. Just knowing that I'm going to have to add a bit of hemp seal now and again takes a lot less time than rehemping the whole instrument, though. What would I recommend for the normal bagpiper out there? That's really tough. That's a hard one to answer. There are benefits and drawbacks to all of these. So the benefit of the polyester is it's going to require the least amount of maintenance to the string itself. The combined waxed and unwaxed yellow hemp, I felt, gave the easiest movement of the tuning joint in particular, but was a bear to keep at the right tension and was constantly needing adjustment over a 6-month period, and it never really settled. The real hemp is actually probably the overall winner in this category. It needed the least amount of maintenance overall because I didn't have to go back and be adding hemp seal to it to make it airtight, and yet it was far more stable as a joint than the yellow was. One of the other ways I was measuring all these strings was on practice channers. So on this practice channer here, I used real hemp, and on this one, I used polyester. And the real hemp was a distant second to the polyester in this particular exercise. I had to add a little bit of hemp fairly early on, and then I had to remove it and had to remove even a little bit more. And the more I played this chanter, the more the hemp would move and swell up and then kind of go back. The polyester, on the other hand, I added string one time, and it's been great. Again, I'm using a bit of hemp seal now and again to just make sure that it glides over nicely, but it's required way less maintenance. So for a practice chanter, I'm going to recommend polyester over either real hemp or the yellow shoe repair linen hemp. For my blowpipes, I'm going to keep using the polyester thread. This joint gets the wettest by far, and it's great not having it swell or move or rot or get stinky or any of that stuff. So definitely polyester is going to remain my choice for blowpipes. One of the qualities I was talking about the real hemp in particular, was that it was a bit grabby. And, well, for the chanter, that might be something you want because, well, it could fall. It's the one joint that's really fighting gravity. So one thought I had was perhaps make the joint of your chanter nearly completely tight with polyester string and then finish it up with just half a wrap or two of single ply real hemp or shoe repair linen. Something where if a bit of moisture got on it, it would actually swell up and help keep it in the joint. You don't want it wiggling out. So we're going to continue this experiment about which one I feel might work best. So I've already found that polyester is perhaps not the best fit for the actual tuning joints in that it requires a little bit more effort, and yet the hemp itself a bit grabby. I want to try a combination of waxed hemp and unwaxed hemp. I think the single biggest advantage that this base joint has had is that combination here with the two waxed and unwaxed strings put together. Again, it gives it enough grab and enough of the unwaxed hemp that you're getting that nice airtight seal because of the hemp here, but the wax is giving some lubricity. It's making it, a little bit easier to move and slide. In an upcoming video, I'll show you how I pre-waxed this spool of hemp with beeswax, but I waxed this myself, and we have this spool here of actual hemp. I'm going to redo the outside tenor that has polyester with these, and we're going to continue this test and see how it stacks up here in a few more months. All right, everybody, that's more than you probably ever needed to know about the various kinds of string, but I wanted to give some honest feedback about how these are working in the real world. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you got something out of this video, think about maybe giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel, all that stuff. It helps more than you know. If you want to go the extra mile, I do have a Patreon where a completely voluntary monthly donation goes a long way to helping, fund research like this. I also give Skype lessons if you want more personalized instruction. Go ahead and head over to www.mattpiper.com or email with the email address you see right here, and we'll get you going. Thanks again, everybody. I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and until next time, cheers.